I'm gonna light on fire. Hi everybody and welcome to the first video of 2020. I was unsure of what to make this week. I felt like maybe doing a 2019 book review video was a little bit, behind the times, but I just really wanted to make it. I did spend a whole week in Topor for New Year's with my family, and although that would have been a great opportunity to do a vlog, I really wanted to spend that time with my family and cherishing every moment that we had together. It was a beautiful time. There are some photos over on my personal Instagram if you want to check them out. But with enough of the shameless plugs, let's just get straight into it, shall we? So this year, my Goodreads goal, last year, my Goodreads goal was to read 52 books. I didn't make it. I read 44 books in total last year, and I believe there were 3 months where I only read a big fat 0 books. If you look at my graph, hopefully it's working up on the screen for you guys, it starts decently strong and then it blur, and then up again and then blur. And I think what happens there is I stop reading when I get super stressed, and that's kind of the opposite of what I should be doing because reading really calms me down. But I get so stressed at work and all I want to do is come home and blob. I don't even feel like I have the energy to read a book. So that's what those few months are. You can see in October, November, my reading picks up again. October, I decided I was going to re-go with my Bookstagram, and in November, I did 2 readathons, the Buzzwordathon and the One Readathon. I'll put my vlog for the Buzzwordathon somewhere. And in November, I also launched my YouTube platform, so I felt not pressure. I genuinely was excited to get into my reading again, as well as the fact that it was wrapping up at the end of the year with work. So I had a big boost, and then December came. What happened in December, Bethany? I got in a real bad reading slump. I remember reading Gilded Wolves as my last book of 2019, and I just didn't really like it. So I'm just going to carry on launching through my statistics and then talk a bit more about my favourite books at the end of the video. I'll leave a timestamp down below if you guys want to look into that. So out of my 44 books, 18% of those 44 books are non-fiction and 82% of them are fiction. Breaking that down even further again, 7% of those fiction books were middle grade, 23% were adult, and the rest was young adult. As you can see, I'm very much a young adult reader. I find the genre really easy to sink my teeth into, which is kind of hypocritical considering I just said when I'm stressed I don't read. I should be reading young adult when I'm stressed. Whatever. My reading can be a mess sometimes, and I think it's good to put out there that you don't need to be a fast reader, you don't need to be always reading, you don't need to be always reading long books. Just read when you want, and I think that's the most important thing. And sometimes on Bookstagram and Booktube you can feel the pressure to always read more books, always read these certain books, and whilst I admit I have definitely fallen into that trap once or twice or 7 times or more, the times when I break it, I often find some of the best books. Okay, I've just got my laptop because the stats are getting a bit hard to remember. So what I did from there is I broke down all of my books, so out of all the 44 books, into genre as well. So in 2019 I read 55% fantasy, 18% self-help, which is essentially all of my non-fiction books, 16% contemporary, some of that was romantic contemps, 9% sci-fi dystopian, and 2% poetry. Fantasy has always been one of my most favourite and most read genres, and I think as I've gotten older I've started delving more into the other genres as I've become more intrigued and find those things more relatable. For example, when I was 12 I could read any kind of text, but the content wasn't always most appropriate, especially considering I had no idea about sex until I was way older. So as a child I often was finding like fantasy something I could read, whereas contemporary and romance and to some extent sci-fi with its like darker themes. I wasn't able to read, I wasn't allowed to read them, so, which I have no qualms about at all. Like, you've got to be aware of what your children are consuming, and I thank mum and dad and the librarians for looking out for little me, because I hate to think what ideas I would have in my mind about what a relationship looks like if I was reading those sorts of things when I was a lot younger. Overall, I feel like I did have quite a successful reading year. My average was 3.98 stars on Goodreads. I'm calling it 4 stars, which for me is quite good. I did try to be really mindful of, especially as I became more aware and in depth with my reviews, of how realistic with myself I was being, and that it's okay if I didn't like a book. So 4 stars, but as the year went on, my ratings did start to decline. I DNF'd one book. I gave 9% of my books 2 stars. I gave 21% 3 stars. 4 stars were given to 33% of the books I read were 4 stars. And there's a grand total of 35% of the books I read this year were 5 stars. Now, one of the things that I was super intrigued with when I decided I was going to track books, which was about November, I went back and like filled out my spreadsheet, is the authors I read, and not just their gender, which by the way was 66% female and 34% male, but their ethnicities and their ethnic backgrounds, because something I've become extremely aware of, especially through BookTube and Bookstagram and just reading articles online, is how undiverse authors represented can be. Okay, so the stats were that 66% of the books I read were by white Americans, 18% Asian, 7% Pakistani American. I need to point out those are the 3 Sabah Tahir books I read. Mexican descent 5%, Canadian 2%, and American Indian 2%. I am quite scared at the fact that 66% of the books I read were white American authors. That's well over half. And it's not even that there's anything inherently wrong with white authors, it's just made me super realise how restrictive that can be on my reading experience. Part of why I love reading so much is that you can experience so many stories from so many perspectives, and I realise now maybe I was a little bit ignorant, and maybe I didn't want to shine that light on the fact that the books I enjoyed may perhaps have had racial stereotypes. Maybe it's just to do with the fact that as I'm getting older, I'm getting a little bit more wiser, and I'm able to see things for maybe what they truly are. So that's it for the statistics. I find it really intriguing breaking things down like that, a bit of a number nerd, but I think it can also be super eye-opening. So, enough numbers. What was my favourite genre of the year? Self-help, self-care, self-love, self-growth. It's something I've really discovered this year, and essentially all the books that I have bought this year, not borrowed from the library, bought are a part of that self-help genre. I find the self-help genre that can sometimes get a lot of shtick for it, whether it's just because people see it as a pseudoscience, or whether it's because people don't want to have their minds opened like that. It's a genre of books that can be very, you hate it or you love it. And personally, I've discovered I love it. I love sitting there with my pen and highlighting things. If you follow me on Insta, you will see me always sharing these little passages on my stories. It's a genre I've really fell in love with, and I've actually learnt a lot from them. My favourite pretty book cover of the year has been H.K. Choi's Emergency Contact. There's just something with pink. Pink's been a big colour in my life in 2019, from my hair to just liking to paint my nails pink. Just pink's been slowly trickling in. Maybe I'm more in touch with my feminine side. Is that how Sexy Eyes works? And I just love the simplicity and the pink on this cover. That's all there is to it. And then I may as well keep this up here, or up here, wherever I've got it, because H.K. Choi is my favourite author of the year. I feel a little bit cheating saying it. I've only read her one book. I don't actually even know if she's got other books, but that book of Emergency Contact hit me so hard. If you don't know, my top 5 books of 2019. I found this not actually as hard as I thought I would. When I was going back through some of my ratings of ones that I gave 5 stars earlier in the year, I realised that maybe they're not 5 stars. I don't, because I'm comparing like my more recent 5 stars to the old 5 stars. Is it because I've become more critical and cynical of some things? But without further ado, my top 5 books of 2019. In 5th place, Inward by Young Pueblo. This is a poetry collection. Book number 4 is one of my self-help books, A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. I find self-help books hard to rate sometimes because although I might take one message that is super powerful, the rest of it might be not as strong. So I find it very hard to give self-help books 5 stars, but A New Earth really did it for me. Book number 3, and one of my more recent reads, 13 Reasons Why by Jay Asher. This is one I read cover to cover. I couldn't stop. No, I haven't seen the TV series. In 2nd place, and you might be surprised, in 2nd place is H.K. Choi's Emergency Contact. I've already talked about this book. I just really loved it. But there is a book that topped it for me this year, and that is The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky. It's just such a poignant and soulful and colourful book. You follow him as he sees things from a different perspective. You see him making friends. You see him falling in love, or at least what he thinks is love. You see him doing a lot of things for the first time, going to a dance. He accidentally gets high at one point. It's just such a great classic, and I'm so happy that I read it. 20, some big goals. Are they big? My 5 reading goals. First of all, Goodreads. I do like a Goodreads goal. I'm going to put less pressure on myself though. 25 books. 1 book every fortnight, essentially. If I do more, that's great. If I do less, that's great. I just really want to let myself feel no pressure. My second goal, perhaps obviously, is to read more books from diverse authors. Goal number 3. Yeah, 3 fingers. Don't be afraid to DNF. Goal 4 kind of goes with the author thing, but I want to try something new in terms of genre. I've had a good experience with some modern poetry, so maybe try some more. I would like to delve a bit more into contemporaries because I loved Emergency Contact so much. And then my very last goal, reading goal for 2020, is to try Upstigate. Oh wow, can you tell it's the end of the video? Going to try and update my Bookstagram a bit more. That's it from me. Let me know what your 2020 reading looks like. Are there any new releases coming out that you think I need to know of? Let me know down below. And I will see you next week with possibly a vlog. Lots of things going on. Shall I buy a car? Who knows? People don't like to get back to me. Thanks for watching. See ya.